The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow, and every Wednesday we have a conversation on issues facing the city with Mayor Paul Coogan, and he joins us again today. Mayor, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Keith. No snow. I'm happy. Thank you.
I know, and I hate to look ahead at the weather, but I like to look ahead at the weather, and it looks like we're going to be in a good little stretch. We're getting into February, getting closer, so those days hopefully will be fewer and far between. I actually want to start today to talk a little bit about affordable housing. I know there was a huge issue during the mayoral campaign. It's a big burden on a lot of residents here in Fall River and across the country, being able to pay for housing. There is an organization, the Housing Massachusetts Navigator in Massachusetts, that came out with some data yesterday about affordable units in Fall River. And I guess those can be debated, but they did submit some numbers. I just want an update from you on, the affordable housing situation here in the city and, the latest that what your administration is doing to help in that.
Right. Well, again, I'm working right now with Mike Dion on some projects with the Attorney General's office to try to get some more units back up and available to rent. I did, as I told you earlier when we spoke briefly, Keith, we looked at the numbers yesterday from the Housing Authority. Right now, we have 5,800 applications on file for housing in the city of Fall River with our Housing Authority, and about close to 60% of those are families looking for a place to live. So there's a tremendous need for affordable housing. And, during the campaign, my contention was the city had to have a balanced housing market. I said it over and over again. I know the state has a 10% minimum for all the housing in all of our communities. They want 10% affordable. Our neighboring communities are 2%, 3%, 4%. So I look at them as this should be dispersed across Massachusetts, so everyone picks up a piece of affordable housing, and you don't clump people into gateway cities or into Boston or Springfield or Quincy. They spread out their housing across the board, and that's the model I favor. And I remember during the campaign, my opponent kept saying, "Well, you didn't apply for the housing money." I didn't apply for the house. They actually offered us housing vouchers, Keith, but they weren't for Fall River residents. Right now, the few apartments we have that are vacant or we could rent, we have to go off of a list, and those people could be from Pittsfield, Quincy, Lawrence, and offer it to them before Fall River residents. There's not a Fall River preference, so that bogs things down even longer. And what we're looking at is, hopefully getting some relief from the state on that and say, listen, it's Fall River. Can we offer Fall River residents first? That's what I always would favor, and see if we can get more people some housing.
Now, those housing vouchers you talk about, those for Section 8, what's considered Section 8 housing?
Similar to Section 8, they were a program that was given out across the Commonwealth. Again, my opponent talked about it a few times, and I remember meeting with the people and saying, why can't I use these to help my residents in Fall River? And they said, no, it's got to be fair. It's got to be across the state. And I really didn't like that. I know we have people here that need help and support, and that's where I'm going to go first.
And I also know that, when the governor was here, in the fall to talk about housing stock and the HDIP programs and the opportunities that, there's a lot of residential units that are going to be built in the city over the next few years that hopefully will help toward this as well, right?
Correct. I think there are reports and studies that show if people move into the brand new apartments with a gym, with the granite countertops, with the assigned parking spot, that may free up some of the old traditional 2 and 3 family apartments, which then will become available to rent for anybody. And what happens is in housing, if it's like a transition cycle. I remember my first apartment was on the 3rd floor on Warren Street, I think, and I moved out of there and I ended up getting a house. That's part of the cycle of housing. If we can free up enough of our own units, which would be great with people moving into the new stuff, we'll have some opportunities there for some reduced rents, hopefully, and on some of our more traditional 2 and 3 families.
All right, definitely a conversation we will continue to have as we move forward. Another conversation we seem to have had for quite a while is the future of the Bank Street Armory. We talked last week on how the city council voted to reject the sale to a local developer who was looking to develop that site into a mix of market rate and affordable housing units. What's the latest you can share in terms of, rectifying and repairing that building?
Well, right now we're just kind of in a holding pattern. The council, as is their right, made the decision they did not want to sell it at this time. We met with the some of the historical commission people, Jason Naraki, Alex Silva, and Mr. Mancini came in and met with myself and Danny Aguiar, and we kicked around a bunch of ideas. Whatever becomes of the Armory is going to be with a plan, and that's what I've said from the get-go. What are the timelines? Where's the funding coming from? What are you going to do with the building? What's the end game on that building? If you look at armories across the state, there is a variety of uses for them. But at the same time, we just don't want to say, as has happened sometimes with some old schools that we're now still struggling to take back, oh, you can have it for $5,000. You can have it for 10. Give it to a nonprofit. They don't have the funds or the planning or the architects or the engineers to develop it properly. That's all I've said from the get-go. If someone comes to me and says, I have X amount of a grant from this one, how can we do this? We'll work with them. But right now, there is no plan out there that I know of for the Armory. And so we'll wait for some guidance from the city council. Other than, again, even if it's going to go to someone else, I want to know what they're going to do with it. We've lost too many schools that we're now fighting to take back because the plans that people brought forward were just inadequate and weren't doable.
What's the timeline in terms of securing the building? And what I mean by that is, there are repairs that need to be done to mitigate the damage that has already been done with the deterioration. And can the city play a role in making those types of immediate repairs to keep the envelope of the building sustainable?
Well, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to wait and see what comes out of this. We've been waiting since May for someone to come up with an idea. I'm not like, people say, well, it's $400,000. I hope they understand that that's 3 policemen or 3 firemen or 3 teachers for a year or a couple of new streets that are shot to hell getting replaced. It's all money. It's all important. Securing the Armory is important also. But what are we securing it for? What am I just band-aiding it so it can sit like the police station for another 10 years with no means to be renovated or rehabilitated? I want to know what is the plan. A Band-Aid's good, but you might have to get stitches and you might have to get some shots afterwards. Where are we going with this? That's what I want to know.
All right. Fine. And speaking of money and budgets and the like, a lot has been made within the city and its spending on solid waste. We can go back of the history of trying to save money with solid waste since, the landfill was closed and the city had a couple of projects, pay as you throw. We don't need to go down that road right now. But there is a concern, I believe, in the city budget concerning paying for solid waste. Those rates go up. Recycling rates have gone up. And I know there was some concern with some counselors about how a previous administration has granted some businesses to have their trash paid when it really shouldn't have done that. And I guess effective in about a month, that's going to end in the city where some of those businesses that had trash picked up, that protocol will end.
All right. I mean, that's where we are. It was what's going on with trash in the city of Fall River, the history of how it's been handled. It just seems like we've been shooting ourselves in the foot the whole way. Now we look at what we're doing with business trash. You have one business across the street with the city picking it up. The other guy's got ABC, a Republic picking up his. It was a very unfair process. I don't even know how they were awarded. I remember I've heard about the pink cards. I've heard about political favors. I've heard about all of this. We have to get a handle on trash. It's going to be a tremendous burden to the city. We met with one of the local companies yesterday. We've met with our pickup crew. I mean, I've had more meetings on trash than anything, and it's a constant struggle. Then just getting it in. We met with the the recyclers yesterday, and they're telling us that the recycling's coming in too contaminated. There's the potential there for $100 a ton surcharge if we don't clean up our recycling. There's all kinds of things swirling all the time about trash. It's a big piece of every city, and we're trying to find a way to get a clear, consistent program going that's fair to the residents, that's fair to our haulers, and it's fair to the city of Fall River. And that's where we are. But believe me, you cannot snap your fingers and say we're taking care of trash. This is one tough job. And, I know people, get impatient and what are you doing?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it needs a major overhaul. I said it during the campaign with Chasel Correa back in the day. I made the ill-fated mistake of saying, tell me what your plan is when you got rid of the bags, and all that turned into was he's bringing back the bags. No, I wanted to know what, the same as I'm talking about the Armory. What are you going to do? How are you going to pay for it? And where are you going to end up? But you get nothing, and that's where you are, where we are now, nowhere.
Yeah. And it appears that this is going to be something that everyone in the city is going to need to take ownership of, right? Not only you as a mayor and the city government to come up with plans, but also educating the community, make sure that they recycle the proper materials. I was watching a city council committee meeting where you talked about contaminated recycling. A lot of it is people throw things in that probably shouldn't be in the recycling. So there's going to need to be, I guess, some ownership from all sides, right?
Well, he was telling us yesterday, garden hoses, baby car seats, there's plastic sent in. It's not that simple. It would be nice if we could get everybody on the same page with trash, pulled together to lower our costs, clean up our recyclables, make sure your bins are marked and you know where they are, and find out what we're doing, because again, it is a big job and we're fighting our way through it.
Yeah, not to slight the city residents at all. They throw things away. They see something that's plastic and they try to do what they feel is the right thing, right? In terms of, hey, it's plastic, it can be recycled, but not everything can be recycled. So
I got that right.
all right. All right, Mayor Coogan, as always, thank you for your time. We'll talk again next week.
All right, Keith. Thanks.
All right. And thank you for joining us here in FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great rest of your week.